Hello, once again, we're here on Survivors Talk, and we have the Cofields, Andrew and Chelsea. I appreciate you guys coming on today. There was a little technical things that were going on trying to connect, but I'm grateful that God has given us this time. And I just want to pray before we get started. Just ask God to bless this time, okay? Thank you. Lord, thank you so much. I thank you for today. I thank you that Cofields have come on and chosen to just talk about their testimony and what God's done for them in their life. And I just pray that the Holy Ghost would just move and just anoint every word that is said. And I pray that whoever watches this video, God, would just feel your presence, to know that you're real and to hear the power that you just do in people's life. And I thank you so much for that, God. In Jesus' name, amen. So a lot of people that maybe watched this video already know that, you dealt with COVID, but it was more than just dealing with COVID. It was, I know Chelsea dealt with some things that while you're in there, and I thought it was fitting that my wife and I come on, that we would just talk to you both. We've dealt with some things, and one thing that my wife brought up was, Chelsea, you dealt with a lot of things while he was in there. Things are out of your control, and for my wife and I know that she stuck to music and prayer and fasting during that time. So I just want to kind of get into it and just ask you just to start talking about what God did for you. Go ahead.
Yeah. The same thing. A lot of it was just prayer, fasting. I created my own playlist while he was in the hospital, and because everything was it was so uncertain, and we just didn't know what was going to happen from day to day. Every time I called the hospital, something bad could have happened.
Yeah.
And I honestly know, and I believe that God completely healed my husband from COVID. And I'm just so thankful and grateful, because I know not every situation turned out like ours did.
Right. I have a question? One thing I was thinking about was there anything that happened in your life? Was there a scripture? Was there a song or something that was given to you maybe even a couple of years ago or right before this happened that got you through it?
Honestly, it was his message that he preached for our church a few months before then. I think it was in October. Mm-hmm. But he talked about if you were weak, God can still use you, and you're still useful in his kingdom. And his message I listened to over and over again. We were just talking about how God can use you even in your weakest state. And I truly believe that that's exactly what God did in that time, that he was unconscious and he was weak and he had no idea what was going on. God was still using him and his life and his testimony to reach so many different people that we didn't even realize until after everything was done, what God's whole plan was.
Yeah. So Andrew, when it came down to you getting into the hospital, I know I looked up on the internet and said that you were playing basketball with your nephew and you started having these symptoms. At the time, did you feel like it was something that you should worry about, or was it just something that progressively got worse and you thought, hey, this is something more than just, not feeling good?
Really, at first, I wasn't all that concerned, other than the fact that it was an abnormal feeling. As someone who jokes around, I feel like I live every day of my life with a sinus infection. I realize in springtime, sinus infections are prevalent, and even upper respiratory problems. Not severe, but a lot of people are dealing with them. So, and to add to that, I hadn't played basketball in months. So from my perspective, it was not so alarming, more so unusual. But then the fever I came down with, or I realized I had the next day, was a little bit higher than I'm used to having if I've ever had the flu or another sickness. But really, I wasn't freaking out about it initially. Even with all the research I had been doing, naturally, I think a lot of people at that time, even though it was very, very early on, we were all trying to figure out, is this going to be a big deal? Looking at news or reading articles. I was even consulting with some friends of mine that are in the medical field, and at the time they didn't know much either. So from that side of things, there wasn't a whole lot to worry about. Other than, I think in the back of your mind, you are thinking, it would be pretty crazy if I did have this virus, and it's coming to light, and I could be one of the first ones. I would definitely say that started to kind of, that started to come to the front of my mind as that week went on.
Yeah.
Dealing with those symptoms.
So when he came down to go into the hospital, Chelsea, did you have to drop him off?
Yeah, me and his mom went and we dropped him off, and we just had to pull up and we basically opened the door and he got out, and then there was a guard there that would take him into the hospital because we were not allowed in.
Yeah. I know the reason why I asked is because, my wife, she caught the virus as well, and she works at Royal Beaumont, which you guys know from being from Michigan, or Andrew. And, I know that when it came to me dropping her off, I felt so like I couldn't do anything. There's nothing I could do, and dropping her off, not knowing if it would potentially be the last time or she would be on a ventilator. I didn't know. And at this point, the Brother Hernandez, story was going on, and, a couple other people that we knew that dealing with it. So I know that dropping her off, it was just, my immediate thing was to pray, but when I left, I wanted to talk to somebody. So did you and his mom talk? I mean, what were kind of some thoughts that you were having?
Yeah, we just sat in the parking lot, and I told her, I was like, I don't want to leave just yet. I want to wait. I want to make sure that, Angel's going to be taken care of, that he's going to be admitted, or, what's happening.
Yeah.
So we waited until he told us that he was being admitted and we could just go home. But even then, it was really hard to leave just because the unknown, like, am I going to pick him up tomorrow? Is it going to be the next day after that? Or am I going to be able to talk to him the rest of the day? Like, just what is happening, since I physically could not be there to see him and to know what was going on with him. It was just really hard to just leave him there.
Yeah. Andrew, so when you got dropped off, did they test you right away? Was it something that, like, when they admitted you, they knew you had COVID?
No, the process was a little drawn out, actually. When I first walked through those hospital doors, and this is Flint, Michigan, as y'all know, it's not exactly the most glamorous place in the world. I love my hometown. I'm from Grand Blanc originally, but I always tell people I'm from Flint because they have no idea where Grand Blanc is at. But going through those front doors, there's the metal detectors, and walking in, and I would even say I was alarmed, a little shocked at what was taking place, because I, for some reason, didn't realize that nobody could go in with me. Now I realize I'm at the point in this sickness where I'm very lightheaded. My symptoms were as severe as they had been because we're 6 days into having them, and my mom was the first one who went up there to see what we were to do as far as getting me checked in, and she came back and said, "We've got to park and you've got to walk in there on your own." So I'm thinking, are you serious?
Yeah.
I don't want to go in by myself and walk in there. They actually got me to a room fairly quickly, which was nice. But then from there, it was all over the place as far as what was going on. And then I believe even the nurses were trying to get clarity. I don't want to speak for that initial nurse that I talked to, but I think initially, because this was before they even were having testing sites and so forth. So there were many hospitals who didn't even have that many tests, if any at all.
Right.
I believe the nurse was trying to get some information as to whether or not they could test me. But then she said, can't test you unless you are elderly or you have underlying health conditions, or you're a medical professional, which I didn't fit any of that criteria.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, when she says that, well, what am I supposed to do? Isn't this a hospital? Isn't this where you're supposed to treat severe sicknesses and diseases? And a lot of the urgent care offices were shutting down around the area. In fact, the hospital I went to, one of their main urgent care facilities was closed. They were diverting people to another office. So I'm at the hospital. Where else do you want me to go?
Yeah.
And even in text messages later on, I would say, do I need to go somewhere else? I felt confident in this hospital. It's a hospital my dad worked at for many, many years, over 2 decades. And yeah, from there, nurse came back and told me we'll do an X-ray just to make sure that you don't have pneumonia, whatever the case might be. And when the X-ray was done, the technician finished up. Nurse came back with the results. It was very clear that my lungs were destroyed, and she said, "Well, you now fit the bill. We're going to test you."
Yeah.
But all the while, as Chelsea said, they're waiting out in the parking lot. And it was definitely over an hour, hour and a half, perhaps 2 hours that they're waiting. And with testing at that time, it wasn't a process that, was a quick turnaround, where they could just get it right back to you, those results. It was several days. They said they had to send it off to a lab. I believe it was a state lab. So, yeah, I didn't know right away that I had COVID, even though all the physicians there, and in the back of my mind, even Chelsea, my wife, or my mom, we're all thinking, talking, I've got it. It's just a matter of them getting those results back to confirm it.
So when it came to admitting you, they admitted you based off of the X-ray and what they saw of your lungs?
Yeah, it was double pneumonia in both lungs, and as I've said on other broadcasts, the nurse, she made it very clear that my lungs were far worse than what she had ever seen before. And I'm not sure how long she'd been in the profession or whatever the case might be, but that was alarming enough to admit me. And my oxygen levels were also very low. When they were finally able to get a reading on those blood oxygen levels, it was matching everything that they knew about COVID up until that point.
Yeah.
Which was enough for them to admit me.
So during this time, and when the nurse talked to you about how she seen your lungs and how it was one of the worst that she had seen, obviously you're getting weaker in your body. You're starting to feel like way more symptoms. You're not. I mean, it's really progressing at this point.
Yeah, that entire night, I could tell that my lungs were overworking. I don't believe I slept at all. Now, the medicine I was on would wipe out most of my memory. The following day would be Sunday, and then the day I'd go on the ventilator would be Monday. But that Saturday night when I was admitted, I have a little recollection of what was happening. I wasn't a really big fan of how I was being treated. And don't get me wrong, I believe our healthcare workers are heroes. They're not celebrated enough. And I had amazing care 95% of the time I was there. But initially it freaked me out because I wasn't getting a lot of one-on-one care. Okay. And when you're struggling to breathe and you're very unsure, you're scared, you don't have anybody around you, that's the last time you want to be by yourself.
Yeah.
And so I was sending texts out to family, and even Chelsea. I was saying, this is rough. I was even joking with her. I was like, can I come back home? Or can they take me to a different hospital? But of course, it's probably best that I didn't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Was it your choice and discussed before you went on the ventilator? Because I don't know. I don't know that process. For her, honestly, thank God that she didn't have to stay. They ended up letting her go home just for a couple hours later, and we've been dealing with it at home. But did they ask you, do you want to go on a ventilator? I mean, is it something that you had to talk with Chelsea about?
From what I've been able to gather, now the talk of going onto a ventilator would have been on Sunday when, afterwards I have no memory of what took place that Sunday. But I can see that I was texting Chelsea, I was texting my stepmother, my mother, trying to get advice. Thankfully, there's a lot of people in my family who have worked in healthcare. My stepmother, my mother, and my father all worked in healthcare, and we have a lot of connections with medical professionals. So we were talking to various people trying to get the best advice. But there was talk of going on the ventilator that day, which I'll be honest, I don't know much about a ventilator other than what I've been told. even experiencing. I wasn't coherent,
Right.
but I don't know much about the medical field in that. I could just tell you, even though I wasn't there, as far as being conscious, I could tell you when it comes to life support or whatever you want to call this ventilator, it was probably out of the blue for me. They probably would have had to do a good job of explaining it, because I'm not someone who's just going to settle for a few words when it comes to that serious of a matter.
Sure.
I'm going to want an elaborate description of what's about to take place.
Yeah.
That's most likely what I could see would have took place. But the conversation was ongoing. And I would say after them telling me all about it, it probably made me not want to go on it.
Right.
The whole thought of, being put to sleep, that medically induced coma. I've only been put out once, and it was when I was getting a tooth pulled. So there's really no in between for me. Hey, we're gonna throw you down for a few days. I've only been out for like 30 minutes, in my life. I don't have any funny videos of me talking nonsense after, anesthesia. So yeah, it was all new to me.
Chelsea, how did it feel knowing that he was going to be on a ventilator?
At that point, before he was on it, I just wanted what was best for him. That was like all my mind was focused on, whatever was best for him. It didn't really hit me like what it was going to be like with him on the ventilator until after he went on, and I couldn't talk to him. I couldn't see him. I didn't know what was going on. And then it really hit me. I really felt like I was by myself at that point, that he wasn't gone, but like he just wasn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't really hit me until after that point. But it was definitely a hard decision, and he was not accepting it easy. And every time I called, they would say, we can't make him do it unless he wants to do it. He has to tell us. He's already signed all the paperwork, but he has to tell us himself that he's ready to go on it. So
I'd also say what's so difficult about us being apart from one another, and a lot of couples can relate to this, some perhaps not, if one spouse, travels on business a lot, and is away for a few weeks. But quite honestly, Chelsea and I have not been away from each other for more than a few days. I believe there's been a few youth camps where perhaps I've been at camp, she's been back home, but during the middle of the week, somehow, some way, she's found a way to come down to camp for a night or two. So foreshadowing, this would have been the longest period of time we've ever been apart from one another, which made it, even more difficult than it already was.
Did they tell you how long that you could possibly be on, or did they didn't know?
They didn't give me a set time, but family was telling me that it would most likely only be a few days. They were probably saying that because if it was more than a few days, I'd have no idea, which is what ended up happening. But there was a friend of my brother's that was on a ventilator for a few days. He was able to come off. From what I can recall, he was the same age that I am. But they didn't tell me it was going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 days. And at that point, it's probably best that there weren't many people who had been put on ventilators yet, to where I could see, for example, you could read a story on Facebook or something that come across your news feed that says, please pray for this person. They've been on the ventilator for 28 days. Knowing myself and how high strung I am, had I read that, I'd be like, no way.
Yeah, right.
But in reality, I was the second person at Hurley Medical Center, which is the largest hospital in that county. I was the second person to be put on a ventilator.
Did that make you nervous? You're only the second one.
Yeah. Coming out of it, it definitely made me like think about what was going through my mind. As I've said before, there's no way of knowing. No one was in the room with me, and they were just getting text messages, perhaps a few FaceTimes as I was wearing that big old mask over my face. But I can only imagine it must have been nerve-wracking, because coming out of it, to think I was the second person on the ventilator. And
I know, even when I asked them, when the doctor called me saying this is what's going to happen, I said, well, what are the chances of how many days, or like, is he going to come off? Like, how's this going to work? And he's like, well, we haven't really had many success stories with ventilators. And I'm like,
why would he say that?
what do you mean? Like,
that's not good.
Does he have enough people? And he's like, well, we haven't had that many COVID patients. to compare data yet. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that still doesn't make me feel better, but I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
And even to backtrack for clarity, I said second person on the ventilator. I believe I was the second person off. I very well so could have been the first person on the ventilator. So
Okay.
I don't believe that's knowledge that we have. We could probably call the hospital and get those records, but if not the first, second, I was, right there, one of the first.
So Chelsea said that you had signed the paperwork to do it, but you still had not gone on a ventilator. What was your hesitation? And then when you finally decided to do it, why did you decide to do it?
My hesitation was I was viewing it as sicknesses or viruses that I've had in the past. As the son of a retired nurse, usually when I've had a virus, my mother would tell me it's got to run its course. You've got to fight it. Antibiotics not going to work when it comes to this virus. Just take it easy. So in hindsight, I'm thinking that's probably what was going through my mind at the time, that I'm strong, I'm young, I've had shingles twice in my life, which most people would say is the very worst disease, virus, whatever it is.
You had it on her face.
I've had it twice, and it was before age 20, and the doctor said, you're 1 in a million, and the pain I suffered from that, I thought it couldn't get any worse. Well, COVID-19 was 10 times worse. I know now. But so that's my thinking. Not that I'm Superman, not that I'm, invincible, but if I've been able to do all this, and I don't consider bronchitis or pneumonia, as I've had in the past, as overly severe, although it can develop into, a life-threatening situation, as it was in my case. But this double pneumonia was different, to the point where my lungs were literally shutting down because of the virus that caused that. So, long story short, I thought I could beat it. I thought I could fight it. I didn't realize how badly or how fast my oxygen levels were dropping. But
Wow. So when you finally did get on it, and you said, was it because you couldn't breathe? I mean, it was just so bad, and you thought, this is really my only alternative?
Yeah. Would you like to answer that? You were more in that situation than I was.
Well, I just kept telling him, I don't want you to fight a losing battle, because he's pushing himself and wearing himself down to continue to breathe as hard as he can, but he's not getting any better.
Right.
And so I told him, I was like, it's better if you just decide right now to go on the ventilator so you can start healing. That way you're not on the ventilator as long as you would be if you just keep fighting it. But he just didn't want to do it. And finally, I think he realized that he was either getting tired, and he just had that reassurance of, if this is what's best for me, then this is what I need to do. Yeah. So I think that's finally when I think it had to soak in a little bit exactly how severe his situation was.
She was giving me the comfort I needed, but then it was a family friend who is a pediatrician that was messaging my stepmother, and he was trying to relay a message to me saying, Andrew, this is what's best for you. So she was giving the comfort. He was giving the facts, and he was giving, the expertise that I needed to hear to truly be convinced. Once again, I'm a numbers guy. I come from a family of mathematicians, and we're all big on, analysis. And from that, it was going to take more than someone saying, and this is not against my wife, it was going to take more than someone saying, oh, honey, this is what's best for you. I needed to hear from a medical professional saying, this is the only way you're going to get better.
Yeah.
And that's what helped me to change my mind.
So I was reading online, and how long were you on the ventilator for?
7 days.
7 days. And one of the things that jumped out to me was you said that you were weak in your body, you were weak in your arms and your legs, but you had a voice. And that really jumped out to me, that, even during this time to where you couldn't do anything naturally, physically, you still had a voice to be able to express how you're feeling and get through it. So what were some things that you used your voice for? What'd you say?
Yeah. When I became coherent again, coming off the ventilator, everything was fuzzy. It was like a TV screen that wasn't getting the proper signal, I immediately realized that my whole body felt numb. When I say I couldn't move my arms or my legs, that's the truth. My legs were coming back to life, if you will. So were my arms. In the way in which they positioned me played into all of that, to the point where the first few weeks I couldn't raise my left arm above my waist because there was nerve damage that was done. But right off the bat, I realized that I couldn't stand up. I couldn't do much on my own other than lift my voice. Now, my voice wasn't pretty. It wasn't. It sounded like I had, lost it completely, and I was regaining that, that talking voice again.
Yeah.
Y'all know what it's like when you lose your voice after shouting in a church service or talking to friends for hours late into the night or whatever the case may be. That's what it felt like. I don't know, on the other side of the phone I probably sound like a robot, but yeah, that's all I could do was lift my voice. When I was initially admitted to the hospital, I'll be honest, I don't recall having these intimate prayer meetings in my hospital room. Now, it would be easy to say that, and people would love that. It makes for a great story that I was interceding. I was, speaking in tongues nonstop until they put me on that ventilator. And I'm telling the doctors, no, stop. I want to pray a little bit longer. And it's not to say that I don't believe in prayer, because what you're going to hear from me next is a testimony to prayer.
Right.
But that truly was not what was happening. I do believe I was in prayer, because that's a daily habit that I have, but it was not as if I was calling my family and friends and saying, let's all FaceTime and let's pray together.
Yeah.
I think because there was so much anxiety and so much fear, I was more so in a state of shock and almost just not wanting to do anything. Even when I came off the ventilator, I had to force myself at times to pray or to sing or to call to get help or to text, because I would lay there and look at the wall. I'd lay there, and because my body was so numb, my nerves were so shot. I told her I couldn't turn on the TV or whatever was, I try not to look at my phone because everything was overwhelming me. Yeah. And that probably had something to do with the hallucinations I was having and all the medicine that was in my system.
Yeah.
But as I couldn't feel my legs, couldn't really feel my arms, the strength with my arms was the first thing to come back. I did lift my voice, and it was almost as if I was realizing that this is the only way I'm going to truly get better, and we're going to turn the corner. Up until that point, people had been praying for me. I didn't really know it. I was unaware of prayer chains that were set up. I was unaware of how my situation had progressed, but as little as I knew, I did know that I was in a serious state. Even after I came off the ventilator, I was very critical. There was a good chance that it could go backwards.
That's what a lot of people were saying, that people would come off the ventilator and then hours later they crash, and a lot of them didn't make it.
Yeah. We actually know people that's happened, friends of family, and I'm unaware of that, but I am aware that I've never felt, paralyzed from the neck down. And yeah, at that point, it was almost a matter of, if I can't do anything else, I'm going to lift my voice. I'm a talker, and if I'm going to talk at this point, I can't call anybody. The nurse half the time wasn't in the room. I'm going to talk to God.
Yeah.
So I lifted my voice, and I was praying. And
I'm sorry. Can you guys hear that? All the kids playing and everything?
That's all right.
All right. There's I don't even know. There's probably 10 of them over here, and that's all we can hear.
They'll have a party.
Sorry. So I know Justin Main. That's kind of a mutual acquaintance that we have, And he told me, and I want to go back to the ventilator thing, which I probably should have talked about before, the the weakness in your body and things like that. But he told me that they got together with a whole bunch of this youth ministers from across the states, and anointed prayer class, just had prayer for you, that I think he said it was on a Friday, I believe, and within just a couple of days that you came off the ventilator.
Yeah.
So when people hear you came off the ventilator, was it a medicine? Was it something you just came off of? Or, was it a miracle from the Lord?
Oh, it was an absolute miracle. No doubt about it. 100%.
Yeah.
Anybody and everybody who was praying for me would attest to that.
Yeah.
There are so many people who've contacted me saying that they saw those angels in my hospital room. Not only did they see those angels, but it was being revealed to them how God was going to reach down and touch me in my body. There was even several who were praying that very night. And Friday, I didn't even know that until now. Now,
Okay.
that prayer cloth, they sent it to me, and it was one of the only items I had in my hospital room. And I've since thanked those guys, all those youth ministers now. It's crazy. We grew up together, going to camps and district events in Michigan. And yeah, that meant the world to me. And that's why I told them. But there are stories of an individual in our church who was in prayer one day, and God revealed to him that 5 days after that current day, I was going to be discharged from the hospital.
Wow.
Now, at this point, I was still on the ventilator. He didn't know what to do with that word that God had given him. So he texted my pastor's wife and told her that the Lord revealed to me, Brother Andrew's going to be off the ventilator. He's going to be discharged in 5 days. Now, my pastor's wife, too, saw those angels in my hospital room, but not to speak for her, I can imagine she's probably thinking to herself, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. He's still unconscious. He's still on this heavy medicine. He's still on a ventilator, and he almost died, a day before or 2 days before that. And 5 days after that text was sent, I was on my way home from the hospital.
Wow. Thank God.
I'm sure
That's
that's
amazing.
And
amazing.
that turnaround from that Friday to Saturday, they did reposition me. They put me in the prone position. But as far as medicine, they're now showing that the medicine I was on is not even working for COVID-19 patients. So you
Is it
cannot.
the hydroxychloroquine?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You cannot say it was medicine. Even my positioning, you cannot say it was positioning. The doctors, the nurses, if you were to have a call with them right now, I can assure you they would say, we don't know.
We don't know.
And by saying we don't know, it lets us know.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Wow. When you talked about angels being in your room, I don't know if you've watched or heard about what Jason Sisko said when he was talking about Sister Walker during the whole Brother Hernandez thing. So we had on Sunday, we have Zoom church, like a lot of churches do. And Pastor Walker said that we were supposed to watch this video from Jason Sisko. And just think about it right now, like it just brings chills to me, because the power of the story that I'm about to tell you guys is so fitting for what you just told me. And Sister Walker said the Lord had showed her that in Brother Hernandez's room, there were angels all around, and they were faced outwards. But then they did an about face. The Lord told her about face, and they had turned in and looked at Brother Hernandez. And she said that what the Lord had begun to show her was that Brother Hernandez was this general, and these angels were sort of like troops, and they knew, and they had asked the Lord, basically, let me go into that room and be with Brother Hernandez during these last days. And the about face was them waiting for him to cross over. And I didn't know that. Sister Walker, Pastor Walker, they're our pastor and sister, and we didn't know that until Brother Cisco had mentioned that in the video. So when you talk about angels being in your room, it seems to me that a lot of our people are having these same exact stories come out of it, that there's these angels in the room, and whether they're guarding you or looking at you, they're in your room. And it's so fitting for what you just said. And I'm glad that you pull out of it. To me and to my wife, I know it's a miracle. But for people who don't know the Lord that would watch this video, how would you tell them it was a miracle? How do you even put it in words? This was God and this wasn't man.
You have to add everything up. It's not one sequence. It's multiple sequences being put together. Whether you want to talk about how young I am, how drastic my situation was, how quickly I was deteriorating, just very unusual for my age, for my background, even when I was on the ventilator. Those first few days was hunky-dory, if you will. I was doing just fine. But then when I failed that breathing test, it was literally, as she alluded to, she was preparing for her next call to be one where they say,
yeah,
you need to make some plans because it looks like he's about done for. Critical condition to the point where
30% chance, right?
Yes, 30% chance. I cannot speak for those doctors and nurses. I would love, some time to be able to share their stories if they still remember me. Now they've had hundreds of patients now, but
you came off of it. I mean, I would imagine that they would remember that because so many people going on a ventilator are just not making it.
Right.
So,
yeah. Even they've been posting updates, and there's only been 30 something that have come off a ventilator out of 400 or 500 patients. And so, I believe with everything inside of me, they would tell you at that point when there was a 30% chance of me coming off, and you heard what my wife said as far as them not hearing, of that many, happy endings when it comes to this.
Right.
They would tell you that I very well so could have been on a ventilator for weeks, like Brother Hernandez was, or other people we know of, because that truly was common. That was the pattern. But even the turnaround,
that was quick.
You just cannot go from a 30% chance of living to Saturday doing better than I had been doing the entire week.
Yeah.
By being put in a prone position or by being given a medicine that doesn't even work. And beyond that, I'm off the ventilator 2 days later.
Yeah.
We're not in 10 days.
Yeah.
We're not talking 2-3 weeks. 2 days later, and I'm home on the Thursday, like just a few days after coming off the ventilator. And now, if you want to talk about complete healing, complete recovery, I'm not 100%, but doctors said 4 to 6 months. And I'm not going to go run a marathon tomorrow. Not that I would ever run a marathon in my life. That's just not me. But certainly I'm feeling amazing. And that is a testament to healing. There are lots of people who it very well so could be 4 to 6 months till they feel back to normal. But you cannot put all those sequences together and say, oh, you got lucky.
Yeah. Right. So, with the Brother Hernandez situation in mind, knowing that he passed away from this, does it give you any, have you thought of why did you make it, compared to why he didn't, or, maybe other people that has it given you any kind of survivor's guilt or anything like that?
Honestly, I don't have any survivor's guilt, but I do feel not so much a pressure, but a push from the Lord.
Yeah.
That if he chose to keep me, I truly believe it's for a purpose greater than I could ever imagine. Mm-hmm. And I believe that it's up to me now to fulfill a calling that I was never even going towards, or I wasn't working hard enough for. And I don't know what that entails, but I don't have survivor's guilt because I understand God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
I've had close friends. My closest friend, if you will, or one of my closest friends, who's from Michigan originally, parents used to pastor in Michigan. She passed away right out of high school in a tragic car accident. My roommate at Bible college tragically passed away in a car accident as well. And each time, if I were to try to think about why them and why not me, I realized I'm not getting any farther down the road. And so if I sit here and have survivalist guilt, I'm not going to be working towards that calling. That's not what God wants me or anybody else to have who survives this. We need to be thankful for the lives that those individuals live, like a Brother Hernandez. And if you will, think about Brother Hernandez. He was someone of great faith. If he had been on the other side praying for people, he would have been one of those prayer warriors who truly was touching the throne and truly was moving the heart of God.
Right.
And so now that's what's really leading me to change everything with my ministry, even my prayer life and my approach come out of this. And there's certain men of God, great faith preachers like Brother Hernandez who passed on. And so now it's people like me and many others who will come out of this. And it's not just those who've had COVID-19. I believe there are ministries that are being transformed all across our country from people who are praying and they're seeing God do miraculous things, not just, when it comes to health, but also being constrained to a home. I believe it's building people's faith when they're seeing how God's moving, even if we're restricted in what we're doing. So I hope that answers your question. I don't feel.
Well, it does. So I wasn't even going to share this, but when you talked about how this is giving like a new life to your ministry, or to move on to be and to do different things greater.
Right.
The other day when we were going to do this, I was sitting down. I'm like, Lord, what questions? What's going on? What do I feel from this? And I wrote down this question, and it was, do you feel like your ministry is going to go in a new direction? Does it reinforce something? Are you going to do something greater? Does this cause you to want to do something more than you ever thought you were going to do before? That was my question, but I had not asked that. So it tells me that I was right on, that, the Lord was showing that, because I think that's important to bring out, because when you come out of something so great like this, you don't go backwards. You don't stay the same. You go on. You go a different route. You go in a new way. Like, you have new words to say. You have new feelings, new emotions. You look at God in such a different way. And in order for other people to see that, it first starts with you saying, listen, this is greater. This isn't something that I'm going to hold in. That's why I believe that, when God put that in, sharing you with the overcomers by the blood of the Lamb and the word of the testimony, to be in the same exact scripture, that tells me that it's important to God. And so many times we have these testimonies that we just hold in, that we're ashamed of, or maybe it was something so great and, somebody else didn't make it out of that situation. So it makes you not want to share that. But we have to put these out here. And that's the whole reason why I'm even doing this. It's the whole reason why I even asked you to be on here, to reach those people, because there's so much power in that. And I believe that your story, I believe your ministry, I believe together, you as a married couple with your son, this is going to take you guys in such a greater way than you guys ever even thought, and you're standing here, you're a miracle, you're talking to us, you're interacting, you're not on a ventilator, you're not worried about him passing away. There's so many miracles that come out of this. And I think it's just amazing in itself that God just loves us so much, man, that sees us in our weakness and says, I'm going to bring you out of this. I'm going to, you're going to gain strength from this. Yeah. So Chelsea, when you found out that he came off the ventilator, how did you feel? I mean, I would imagine you felt great, but did you feel like he was going to come off of it? And then when he did, you knew, hey, the Lord told me this, or you didn't know?
I knew he would come off. I just didn't know how long. Through this whole time in my prayer time, I felt like God kept saying the process of him being sick, the process of him healing. Like, this is just going to take time. I felt like he was telling me, like, it's going to be okay, but it's going to take time. And so I felt like I trusted God enough to know that he was going to come off. Like I said, I just didn't know when or how long this was going to take. and when he did come off of it, I felt so relieved, but at the same time, I was still very scared. Like,
Yeah.
same thing, a lot of people going back on it, or like having a really bad relapse, or, whatever the case may be. So I was super excited and so thankful. I remember just walking around the house and just crying. Just all I could say was, thank you, God. Thank you for what you've done for my husband. And just continue to reinforce the fact that even though he had come off the ventilator, I know that God was going to continue the healing process and completely heal him in the perfect timing. And so I was so thankful and so grateful that he came off it, but I also knew the risks he was taking of coming off of it and going back on it, or, whatever his health might be afterwards.
Wow. So I know that you had talked about you're feeling greater, feeling better, not greater, feeling better. How much longer do you have to get back to 100%, you think?
That's a great question. I wish I knew it. I would say I could foresee myself being back to 100% within a month or two, or month and a half. I really don't think it's going to be 4 months, from the time I was discharged to when I feel better. And of course, we're already a month in.
Yeah.
Based off of, how I've been doing physically now, the psychological aspect is a totally different story.
Yeah.
And I've tried to make a lot of people aware of that, from being put on a ventilator, everything I went to beforehand with having to sign those papers and then coming off and not sleeping for 3 straight days. Really, it was 3.5 days, if you will, until I took a little bit of a nap. There's a lot of strain that puts on the brain and everything that was transpiring psychologically. So because of that, it's been different for me in that I've never had a lot of anxiety. I am very high strung, but it's never been anxiety. I'm not ever really nervous to the point of where I'm shaking or I'm freaking out.
That's how I am. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
He's the one who worries. I don't. Like if a appliance breaks down, I'm like, oh, well, the Lord's got one for us already. Like I just, I'm like the same. I'm the same way, man.
Well, you're better than I am. I can be a worry. No, I can be a worry wart. But in this situation, it was the anxiety I've been feeling is different. Right. In that a lot of it is coming out in unknown ways. When I'm sleeping, I'll wake up and it's not a night terror. It's more of I'm waking up and I'm in and out of consciousness, and I'm almost back in that hospital bed. And I've said crazy things to Chelsea when I've woken up. And a lot of this was the first few weeks after I came out of the hospital. But I'd say, Chelsea, put me back on the ventilator. And she's like, what? Yeah. Or I'd say, this hospital bed is uncomfortable, and we're laying on a mattress. And, those anxiety attacks mostly come at night. But I won't, I'll be honest, the first several weeks at home were pretty horrible.
Yeah.
I would almost dread having to go to sleep, which was what it was like when I was in the hospital, because during the day, the nurses would give you more attention. But at night, they're assuming you're sleeping, so they don't really need to do a whole lot. Yeah. Little did they know I was laying there awake all night long for 3 straight days.
Wow.
So that has impacted my sleep patterns. And even if you've ever been in the hospital, they're always, every 4 hours they're coming in. There's cycles of when they're coming to check on you. And that really factored into me not being able to sleep through the night.
So at any point, did you ever view this as a spiritual attack, or did you think this was just because it's going on in the world, you got it, and it's just part of that?
I've never viewed it as a spiritual attack, other than when I came off the ventilator. How I've tried to put it for people to understand is, I believe everything, transpired. We do live in a fallen world. So I'm not here to say that God, gave me COVID-19, or it's more so I'm allowed to get COVID-19 because we live in a sinful world. And when I got the virus, I realized that afterwards, God was using it for something greater. Now, when I came off that ventilator, though, I tried to tell people it's almost as if the enemy was trying to kick me while I was down, because even mentally, I'm even though I'm praying, I'm praising, I'm doing everything that I can, and I'm feeling that peace. It was almost as if I had not, I wasn't able to really pray that much, because the doctors were saying, don't use your voice. You're going to mess yourself up. And here, I'm a vocalist, and they're saying you could do permanent damage to your vocal cords. I'm like, well, I don't want that to happen. But I would pray as often as I could. But it almost felt if I didn't pray nonstop 24/7, the enemy was going to start attacking me.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening. Every time I would stop, truly just going in and talking to the Lord, and just I lay there for a little bit, and I looking at the wall or whatever, as if the enemy was trying to hit me. So in that aspect, it did feel like a spiritual attack when I was in that hospital room.
Yeah, I feel like to share this with you. So this is, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I had this dream, and I was face down in this mud, completely just in it. And this huge boot, way bigger than me, just kept stomping me. And I was like, what? I mean, why does this boot keep doing this? And I just felt like the Lord tell me, it's the enemy, and he wants to keep you down, but he can't kill you. And it's the same thing with you. It's like he wants to keep you down and kind of keep dragging you through, all of this, stuff that's going on. But as well as we do, that he's not going to keep you down. You're going to get back up from this, and it's going to, like you said, your life and your ministry is going to be so much greater than it would have ever been had you not gone through all of this, And no matter how big the enemy's boot is, God's hand is way bigger.
Well, and I'd say this. We're all aware of the story of Jesus coming and raising Lazarus from the dead. But if you read that story, you see very clearly that Jesus waited. And he waited on purpose so that the miracle would have greater meaning for his disciples.
Right.
And I truly believe that for me, for my faith to be built to the level it is now, I needed to go through those few days of not sleeping, feeling those attacks, because it was every time I'd lift my voice and every time I would pray, something supernatural would happen. I've said this in other outlets. I felt so close to heaven. It was almost as if every time I opened my Bible, the words were jumping off the page. And it was just God was, and there's times where that happens in our devotion, and we'll feel that, but it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. As if I didn't even need to pray, Lord, give me a word. He said, it's right here. Boom. Yeah. And, if I would have just been released from the hospital minutes after I come off the ventilator, which that obviously wouldn't have happened, who knows, what I would have missed out on with those faith-building experiences.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, especially view Christians that, they don't have bad things that happen in their life. They don't really go through things that, ordinary people, go through. But that's not the truth. I mean, my wife and I have been through so much, and we come out greater, on the other side. But it's not just one situation. It's multiple things. Yeah. And we wouldn't be the people that we are now, and we would definitely not be doing this with you guys had we not gone through everything. So as much as we don't want to go through it, I'm very grateful for those situations, because they have shaped me and molded me and allowed me to, view God more than just someone that gives you gifts or somebody that just looks down on you, like some one-eyed ogre that just wants to just always come down on you, So I would imagine that this situation is similar.
I mentioned this in that sermon she was alluding to that I preached last year, but I would be afraid if I was the person who could say, I never have hardships, I never have trials, I'm never weak, because the only way we can ever get stronger is if we're weak to the point where God can mold us into what he wants us to be.
Right.
And so even going back to the beginning of this year, I haven't shared this really anywhere, but my prayer at that point was, Lord, I need you to break me. I need you to mold me into something different than I am now. That's not to say I wasn't living as I should be living. or I wasn't doing what I should be doing, but I felt as if I was not reaching the level that he wanted me to reach. And there were some habits that they weren't horrible in my life, but surely God could restructure them to make me into a different person.
Right.
And I'm not going to say with assurance that the Lord has revealed to me that after that prayer was spoken, he answered it and allowed me to get COVID-19. That's not for me to say. I don't have that revelation, but I do know that it really matches what has happened now, because it has transformed my thinking, my faith, and really my outlook into what God can do. You're talking about a transformation in ministry and how it'll be different. I'll be honest, I cannot shake messages of faith and miracles. My students that I speak to on a weekly basis, it might be driving them a little bananas, but every week I'm wanting to talk to them about the miraculous.
Yeah.
Because if my ministry has changed in any way, it's probably in that I'm going after the miraculous. It's not to say that, we have to have miracles to have moves of God, or to have people come to the Lord. But I also realize we're missing out on a whole lot if we're falling short of really praying for God to do the miraculous, because I believe he's wanting to do it.
Yes.
Holding him back with our lack of faith.
Yeah.
And that's what truly, if you want to talk about how my ministry is going to change and how I hope it influences not only my church, but our entire movement, is that I hope to spread a faith towards the miraculous, to really encourage people to not settle for the mundane. And I told my students the other night, like, miracles are not supposed to be a one-in-a-lifetime occurrence. If God does something remarkable in your life, don't just settle for that one time he does it. Get ready for the next occurrence.
Yeah. Right.
And that's how my mindset has changed.
Yeah. My mindset changed about miracles actually maybe about a year into church. I came in 2000. I was in Sunday school as a kid, but I wasn't really anything. I got the Holy Ghost at 19 in the year 2000, I believe, in 1999. But about a month before her and I got married, I was working on a construction site and I fell 14 feet. And when I fell backwards, and I fell all the way down, and I didn't know what was going on. I was so disoriented. And I went to go get up, and my body went to get up, but my right leg, my foot just stayed. And I realized that my leg was broken. But what happened on the way down was, from my waist up, I felt this, just a feather. And I just laid down. And when I went to go get up, the Lord told me that my walk with him was hurt. But he had spared me. I should have been a lot more injured than I did, because I fell down to concrete 14 feet, and I should have tumbled. And so early on, the Lord was showing me, even though my walk with him was hurt, how miracles were possible, because I should have been in a wheelchair the rest of my life. And that's the second time in my life that I had an accident like that, to where I should be paralyzed. So early on, I've known miracles, to be part of our life. And that's why I am the way I am when it comes to faith. I just believe that if God has control over my body, then he has control over my life and my situations. And nothing occurs to God. So thank you for sharing that. And I would keep talking to your students about it. I would just keep hammering it home with them, because until they have something like you, or a situation, a miracle like that, they need to hear about it. And it's so important. And I believe that going forward, so many miracles are going to come out of your ministry, out of your life, your family's life, and passed on to your son, and so forth. So, but I have a word that I felt like the Lord gave to me, and it's something that we hear all the time, and it is Psalms 107:2, but it's in New Living Translation, and it says, "Has the Lord redeemed you? Then speak out. Tell others he has redeemed you from your enemies." And I felt like when it came to you, death was not going to take you. You were redeemed from the situation. And by you going out and talking about this and speaking out, that there's somebody out there that's going to hear this. There's somebody out there that is going to view this video that I believe is going to look for an apostolic church, look for a church, begin that walk, that relationship with the Lord. And it's just so important to be able to put these things out there. I really appreciate you guys coming on today. I know that, you know, you have a child that's sleeping. We have 4 of them being quiet back in a room right now, which we're really grateful for. The lady next door is not mowing anymore. The kids over here aren't, you know, they're not loud anymore.
Now we got our neighbor mowing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for going, you know, on Survivor's Talk and just supporting us. But it's not about content, how much we can put out there, but it's about what's being put out there. And I just thought that it was real valuable for someone's life to be able to hear, you know, you and your wife to come on here. So thank you guys so much. If there's anything else you want to say, or
No. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you guys so much. And I hope that one day we can probably meet in person and I can shake your hand and, you know, that. So
Or elbow bump.
yeah, no, yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, no more shaking. Yeah, no more shaking hands. You're right. Yeah, that's right. So thank you guys so much. Really, really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing and talking with you guys again. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It'd be great.
All right. Thank you
Bye.
guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.